April 8, 1943. Hauptmann Johannes Mackie Steinhoff banked his Focke-Wulf 190 over the Dutch coast, sunlight flashing off his canopy. Below, formation after formation of American bombers crawled toward Germany like fat silver beetles. Easy prey. Then he saw them. Enormous fighters, twice the bulk of any Messerschmitt, lumbering beside the bombers. Their barrel-shaped fuselages caught the light. Steinhoff's wingman's voice crackled through the radio. Milchflaschen, milk bottles. The P-47 Thunderbolt had arrived in Europe. German pilots laughed. They'd been laughing at American equipment for months. The soft-skinned bombers that burned at a single cannon strike. The poorly trained crews. The doctrine written by men who'd never seen combat. Now this, a 7-ton fighter that looked like it could barely turn. They sent us farm equipment, Oberleutnant Heinz Knoke wrote in his diary that night. Not fighters, machinery for hauling milk. But the laughter would be brief. Within 3 weeks, Knoke stopped writing jokes. His diary entries grew terse, factual. March 30th. Lost Becker and Schmidt. The Thunderbolts dove through our formation. We couldn't catch them. April 7th. Hartmann bailed out. 2 50 caliber hits. His entire left wing, gone. The P-47 revealed its truth slowly, brutally. It couldn't turn with a Messerschmitt. In a sustained dogfight, any Luftwaffe pilot worth his wings could outturn the massive American fighter. But the Americans weren't dogfighting. They came from 28,000 feet, diving at 600 miles per hour. 8 50 caliber machine guns opened fire at 800 yards. The Browning M2, John Browning's masterpiece, fired 850 rounds per minute per gun. 6,800 rounds per minute total. A 3-second burst put 204 bullets into the air. Messerschmitt pilots pulled hard into turns, trying to force the classic dogfight. The Thunderbolts didn't turn. They dove through, raked their targets with gunfire, and zoomed back to altitude on pure engine power. The Pratt & Whitney R2800, double wasp, 2,000 horsepower, 18 cylinders, 2,700 pounds of American industrial might. Boom and zoom. The Luftwaffe had never faced this tactic before. It negated every advantage their fighters possessed. Maneuverability meant nothing if you couldn't get your guns on target. Climb rate didn't matter when the enemy started 5,000 feet above you. And the Thunderbolt absorbed punishment like nothing in European skies. Knoke watched one take 47 20mm cannon hits, its entire tail section shredded to aluminum lace, and still fly home. Another lost 6 feet of wing to a head-on collision with a Messerschmitt and landed safely in England. "We can kill the pilots," Steinhoff told his squadron, "but we cannot kill the machines." By summer 1943, Thunderbolts escorted bombers as far as the German border. Luftwaffe losses climbed. June, 284 fighters destroyed. July, 302. August, 365. But the bombers still flew unescorted deep into Germany. The Thunderbolts' range, 475 miles with drop tanks, wasn't enough. Berlin was 640 miles from England. The Me-109s and FW-190s ruled the interior. If this glimpse into tactical evolution intrigues you, a like tells us to keep digging into the stories behind the machines. Now watch what happened when another fighter changed everything. The German aces knew this. They waited for the Thunderbolts to turn back at the border, then swarmed the B-17s. On October 14, 1943, the 8th Air Force sent 291 bombers to Schweinfurt. 60 never returned. 600 men dead or captured. The mission became known as Black Thursday. The Americans needed range, deep penetration, a fighter that could reach Berlin and beyond. They already had one. They just didn't know it yet. December 1, 1943. Major James Howard lifted his P-51 Mustang off the runway at Bottisham, England. The aircraft had arrived in Europe just 2 weeks earlier. Most pilots had never seen one. Howard had flown it exactly 4 times. Today, his 356th Fighter Group would escort bombers to Solingen, Germany, 240 miles inland, deeper than any American fighter had ever gone. The Mustang looked nothing like a Thunderbolt, sleek, almost delicate. Its laminar flow wing cut through air with minimal drag. The Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, the same power plant that drove Spitfires, hummed with 1,290 horsepower. But the real magic was in the fuel tanks. 85 gallons internal, two 75-gallon drop tanks external. Total, 435 gallons. Combat radius, 650 miles. Berlin was now within reach. The bomber formation droned toward Germany. Howard's Mustangs weaved above them. At the border, the P-47s waggled their wings, the universal gesture of farewell, and turned back. The Mustangs continued. "This is where we find out," Howard muttered into his mask. 15 minutes later, 60 German fighters appeared. Me-109 Gustavs and W-190 Antons, the newest variants. They'd been waiting. They expected naked bombers. They found Mustangs. The German formation leader, never identified, must have hesitated. These weren't Thunderbolts. They were smaller, faster, shaped like racers. What were they? His hesitation cost him. Howard's wingman fired first. The lead Messerschmitt shed pieces and nosed over, trailing smoke. The German formation scattered. What followed was revelation. The Mustang could turn with anything the Luftwaffe flew. Its roll rate matched the FW-190. Its acceleration exceeded the Me-109. But unlike German fighters, it had American reliability. Systems that worked at altitude, guns that didn't freeze, radios that transmitted clearly at 28,000 feet. Howard personally shot down 4 fighters that day. His squadron claimed 13, 0 bombers lost. The Mustang had entered the war. By January 1944, 3 Mustang groups operated over Germany. By February, 8. The numbers told a story that words couldn't. February 20th, Big Week began. 5 days of maximum effort against German aircraft factories. 3,800 bomber sorties, escorted wall-to-wall by fighters. The Luftwaffe rose to meet them. Hermann Göring had ordered every fighter in Germany into the air. The slaughter was catastrophic for the Luftwaffe. February 20th, 61 German fighters destroyed. 21st, 48. 22nd, 59. 23rd, 31. 24th, 37. 25th, 56. 292 fighters destroyed in 5 days. The Luftwaffe lost more pilots in Big Week than in any equivalent period of the entire war. Experienced squadron leaders, aces with 20 and 30 kills. Men who'd fought since Poland, dead, captured, missing. Oberleutnant Heinz Knoke wrote on February 24th, "I saw Steinhoff bail out today. His aircraft was on fire. I couldn't help him. There were too many of the silver ones. The Mustangs. I counted 12. I had 2 wingmen. We ran." March the 6th, 1944. The first American fighters reached Berlin. Lieutenant Franz Stiegler stood in the operations room at Rechlin when the report came in. "Amerikanische Jäger über Berlin." Impossible. Berlin was beyond maximum range for any Allied fighter. The operations officer checked twice. The report stood. Enemy fighters circling the Reichstag. Stiegler scrambled with 20 aircraft. At 19,000 feet over Spandau, he found them. 68 P-51s orbiting like chrome dragonflies. The Americans had flown 640 miles. They still had fuel to fight. The combat lasted 18 minutes. Stiegler's formation destroyed 3 Mustangs. They lost 9 fighters. 2 pilots he'd known since flight school died that day. 1 in the air, 1 on the ground when his chute failed to open. That night, Stiegler drank schnapps in the officers' mess. "They can go anywhere now," he told his wingman. "There's nowhere left that's safe." His wingman, 20 years old, 12 missions, stared into his glass. "Then we're already dead. We just haven't hit the ground yet." But the Mustang's greatest impact wasn't tactical, it was psychological. For 3 years, Luftwaffe pilots had owned German airspace. They scrambled from secure bases, fought at altitudes and locations of their choosing, landed safely when damaged or low on fuel. The Reich was their fortress. Inside it, they were kings. The Mustangs shattered that assumption. April 8, 1944. Oberstleutnant Walter Dahl led 30 Me-109 Gustavs toward an American bomber stream near Magdeburg. Standard intercept. His aircraft were fresh from the factory, his pilots rested, his fuel tanks full. 4 minutes from intercept, his radar operator called a warning. Indianer! Enemy fighters. Dahl checked his mirrors. Empty sky. He scanned left and right. Nothing. The first Mustang appeared 800 feet above him, diving at 45 degrees. Its 650 caliber guns opened fire at 600 yards. The second appeared below, climbing into a high G turn. The third came from his blind spot, his 5 o'clock low position. They'd been there the entire time, waiting, above the Luftwaffe's combat ceiling, beyond visual range. They'd tracked the German formation from England, climbed to 33,000 feet, and positioned themselves with the sun at their backs. Subscribe to see how this tactical evolution reshaped air combat forever, because the innovations that followed influenced fighter doctrine for the next 80 years. Dahl dove hard left, his wingman following. The Mustangs stayed with him. At 400 miles per hour at 300 feet above the ground, he couldn't shake them. His Gustav could outturn a Mustang marginally, but the American pilots weren't turning. They were herding him into a second flight of Mustangs. Dahl bailed out at 240 feet. His parachute opened 12 feet from the ground. He broke both ankles on landing. His wingman died in the crash. Of 30 aircraft, 6 returned to base. They hunted us, Dahl wrote later, like wolves. They didn't just defend the bombers. They came looking for us, in our own sky, above our own bases. The Americans called it fighter sweep, sending Mustangs ahead of bomber formations to clear German fighters from the sky. It inverted the entire strategic equation. Instead of defending, they attacked. Instead of reacting, they dictated. Luftwaffe pilots began refusing missions, not cowardice, exhaustion. The psychological toll of being hunted in your own airspace by aircraft you couldn't outrun, flown by pilots who seemed to have infinite fuel and ammunition. Major Erich Hartmann, the highest-scoring ace in history, with 352 confirmed kills, wrote in his combat log, May 7th, engaged 8 Mustangs over Dresden, shot down 2, ran out of ammunition. They chased me for 45 minutes. I couldn't shake them. Finally lost them in cloud at 50 meters altitude. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely land the aircraft. Hartmann, 352 kills, hands shaking. By summer 1944, the numbers had become mathematical certainty. The Luftwaffe started the year with 1,500 single-engine fighters on the Western Front. By June, that number was 840. By September, 430. The Americans built more Mustangs each month than Germany could build fighters of all types combined. But production wasn't the fatal metric. Pilot experience was. In January 1944, the average Luftwaffe fighter pilot had 450 hours of training. By December, 80 hours. The Americans averaged 350 hours. Less than the Germans had at the war's start, but sufficient. More importantly, American pilots rotated home after 50 missions. German pilots flew until they died. The mathematics were brutal. An experienced German ace might shoot down 2 Mustangs before dying, but he flew against 80 Mustang pilots who each had 30 missions of experience. When he died, his knowledge died with him. When an American pilot rotated home, he became an instructor. The Luftwaffe was eating its own seed corn. Lieutenant Franz Stiegler survived the war. In 1986, he wrote, By autumn of 44, I was flying with boys, 17-year-olds who'd soloed twice. I'd give them one instruction. When you see Mustangs, run. Don't fight. Don't be brave. Run. Most didn't listen. Most died on their 3rd or 4th mission. September 27, 1944. Stigler scrambled from Reckland with 6 aircraft. 2 pilots had under 20 hours in type. They were supposed to intercept bombers over Berlin. They never reached Berlin. 12 Mustangs ambushed them 60 miles from the city. The fight lasted 4 minutes. Stigler ordered his formation to scatter and run for home. 3 aircraft returned. The 2 inexperienced pilots didn't. I stopped learning their names after that, Stigler wrote. There was no point. November 1944, the Me-262 Schwalbe entered service. The world's first operational jet fighter. 540 miles per hour, 4 30mm cannons. It could overtake any Allied aircraft and destroy a bomber with a single pass. On paper, it changed everything. In practice, it changed nothing. The Schwalbe was fast, but it was also fragile, short-ranged, and required extensive runways. It could outrun a Mustang in level flight, but it couldn't outturn one. And Mustangs didn't fight fair. They waited at German jet bases. When the Schwalbes took off, the Mustangs bounced them, caught them at their slowest, most vulnerable moment, wheels still retracting, speed still building. When the jets returned, low on fuel, the Mustangs waited again. November 26th. Major George Preddy caught 3 Me-262s on approach to Ackmer Airfield. All 3 were in landing configuration, gear down, flaps extended, speed below 200 miles per hour. Preddy shot down all 3 in 90 seconds. It felt like murder, he wrote later. They were helpless. But this was war, and they'd have done the same to us. The jet fighters, Germany's technological marvel, its supposed salvation, became target practice for obsolete propeller-driven aircraft flown by well-trained pilots with unlimited fuel and clear doctrine. The last great irony came on April 16, 1945, 3 weeks before Germany's surrender. Major Franz Stiegler scrambled from Salzburg in an Me-109 Kilo 4, the final, ultimate development of the Messerschmitt line. His aircraft was better than the Gustav in every way. Faster, more maneuverable, better armed. It represented 4 years of combat evolution. He climbed to 28,000 feet over Munich, alone. His squadron had ceased to exist. He was the last pilot. Below, a formation of 100 B-17s crawled toward the city. Above them, 60 Mustangs. Stigler orbited for 3 minutes, watching. The math was simple. He had 120 seconds of ammunition. 60 aircraft to get through. No wingman, no support, no escape. He lowered his nose, shoved the throttle forward, and dove toward the bombers. Not because he believed he could stop them. Not because he thought he'd survive. Because surrender wasn't a German word yet. At 12,000 feet, 8 Mustangs converged on him. He shot down one, his 48th kill, and ran for the Alps. 5 Mustangs pursued. His engine was smoking. His ammunition was gone. He had perhaps 2 minutes of fuel remaining. He spotted a valley, dove to treetop level, and followed a river into Austria. The Mustang stayed on him. 2 miles from his base, his engine seized. He bellied the aircraft into a field. When he climbed from the cockpit, shaking, bleeding from a gash above his eye, he could see the Mustang circling above. They didn't strafe him. Professional courtesy between pilots. One waggled its wings and climbed away to the west. Stigler sat in the grass and watched them disappear, sleek silver shapes against the afternoon sun. Untouchable, unstoppable. We mocked them, he said decades later. The Thunderbolts. We called them milk bottles, clumsy American machinery. Then the Mustangs came, and we learned Americans don't make the most elegant weapons. They make the ones that win. On April 30, 1945, Adolf Hitler died in his bunker. 8 days later, Germany surrendered. The final tally: the Luftwaffe lost approximately 70,000 fighter pilots killed or captured between 1943 and 1945. The 8th Air Force lost 43,000 air crewmen, but of those lost, 18,000 were captured and survived. Most Luftwaffe pilots who went down over Germany died. They had no vast ocean to cross, no protective distance. They fought over their own ruins. The P-51 Mustang destroyed approximately 4,900 German aircraft in air-to-air combat. It had the highest kill ratio of any American fighter, 3.7.1. For every Mustang lost, nearly 4 German aircraft died, but the numbers don't capture the essential truth. The Mustang didn't just defeat the Luftwaffe through attrition, it broke it psychologically. It made German airspace, previously the safest place for German pilots, into a killing ground. It transformed defense into offense, turned the hunted into the hunters. Franz Stigler and his family immigrated to Canada in 1953. He became an engineer. In 1990, he traced the crew of a B-17 he'd spared over Germany in 1943. He'd escorted their damaged bomber to safety instead of finishing them off. The pilot was Charlie Brown, who'd become a colonel in the United States Air Force. They became close friends. Before Stigler died in 2008, he told Brown, "You Americans won the war the moment you decided you could afford to lose. We Germans never learned that. We fought every battle like it was the last one. You fought every battle like it was practice for the next. The Mustang epitomized that philosophy. It wasn't invincible. It wasn't magical. It was good enough, produced in sufficient quantity, flown by adequately trained pilots who understood. Survival matters more than glory. The German aces laughed at American fighters. They mocked the industrial approach, the mass production, the good enough engineering. They believed in the perfect weapon flown by the perfect warrior. They learned otherwise at 600 miles per hour, 30,000 feet above Berlin, when silver aircraft with stars on their wings appeared where no fighter should exist and hunted them across their own sky until there was nowhere left to run.